ombudsperson for to ensure accountability for responsible enterprise when Canadian companies are doing business abroad. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary will have 3 minutes and 50 seconds coming to her when we resume questions after question period. Statements by members. Déclaration de député. The Honourable Member for North Vancouver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to express my very deepest sympathies to the families directly affected by last week's tragic events, to the community of Humboldt, and to all Saskatchewanians. Having spent my childhood, adolescence, and early adult life in that wonderful province, I was extremely saddened. In a province that is so community-oriented and where personal relationships amongst community members are so strong, there is clearly great sorrow. However, these strong bonds that exist between neighbours and between communities have and will be a source of strength as Saskatchewanians struggle to come to grips with the impacts of the accident. All Canadians mourn with the families, with Humboldt, and with Saskatchewan. On behalf of my constituents, my family, and myself, I would like to express our deepest condolences to the families, to the community, and to all Saskatchewanians.
The Honourable Member for Prince George Cariboo.
Mr. Speaker, I, like many Canadians, all Canadians, were absolutely heartbroken by the news of the Humboldt Broncos tragedy. While I did not personally know any of the players or coaches, like many Canadians from coast to coast to coast, I too have spent countless hours on the bus, first as a player and then as a coach. It is what we have to do in rural communities if we choose to play sports or participate in events. At the beginning of a season, when parents bring their children to the rink to join our team, they are placing their trust in us as coaches and as an organization to protect their children. Their children become our children. They become our family. And just as we would with our own children, we agonize over every detail to ensure the safety of their children on and off the ice. Mr. Speaker, my heart has been filled with incredible sadness since the first hearing this news. The scenario has been played out in our minds over and over and over again. This indeed is amongst our worst nightmares. Since the news broke of the accident, former players, coaches, and volunteers have all reached out to me. The reaction is the same. We are all numb. I can imagine what was going on just before the accident. An iconic sports movie playing on the video, a poker game in the back, coaches sitting quietly thinking about the previous game and about tonight's lineup, and the quiet conversations of hopes and dreams. As a father, I can't even begin to imagine the pain the families are experiencing. The community of Humboldt, the surviving players, and the families of the deceased will need our nation's prayers, strength, and support for a very long time. Long after the cameras and the media go away, these communities and these families will need us all as a nation to continue to lift them up. This pain will endure long after the ice from this season has melted. Hearts will continue to break long after the final buzzer goes. On behalf of all families in my riding of Cariboo Prince George and our proud hockey teams, the BC Major Midget League Cariboo Cougars, the WHL Prince George Cougars, the BC Junior Hockey League Prince George Spruce Kings, our thoughts and prayers are with those who we have lost, those who are still fighting, the community of Humboldt, the Humboldt Broncos organization, and we ask that we all take a moment to also say a prayer for the families involved and as well for the first responders involved in this unbelievable tragedy. This will undoubtedly have an immeasurable impact on them as well. And Mr. Speaker, we ask that beyond today, we continue as a nation to embrace and lift these families up and hold them in our hearts. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Fredericton.
A loving mother, wife, educator, and caring friend of many, Anne-Marie Eagles passed away last month after a long battle with cancer. Anne-Marie was strong in her faith and had a love of life that she shared oh so well with oh so many. Professeur et conseillère en...
A dedicated teacher and guidance counselor, she delighted in instilling in her students the belief and abilities to achieve their dreams. In recent weeks, many former students have shared stories of how their time in Madame Eagle's classroom has had a lasting impact on their lives.
Poured at her passing reminds us of the tremendous impact of a simple, warm smile and the sincerity for well-being of others that can have such a large impact on a community. Together, we honor the life and legacy of this beloved and inspiring woman and send our thoughts and prayers to her husband Mike, sons Matt and Chris, and to the entire Eagles and Alain families.
Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Wahiguru Chikakalsa, Shri Wahiguru Chikifate. Subnu Vasaki di Laklak Vedai, Mr. Speaker. Men Umid Kardan Vasaki da Tiohar Tuhadele Kusian Vala Hove. Wishing everyone, Mr. Speaker, a very joyous Vaisakhi from the NDP and from our national leader, Mr. Jagmeet Singh. And may the festival of Vaisakhi fill everyone with hope and happiness.
This festival celebrates human rights and emphasizes the fact that we are united. No matter your gender, ethnic group, sexual orientation, or identity of any kind, you should be free of any prejudice, oppression, or discrimination.
Wahiguru Chikakalsa, Shri Wahiguru Chikifate.
The Honourable Member for Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, I wish to welcome to Ottawa the Canadian Airports Council. CAC is a voice of more than 100 airports across Canada, and they work to ensure Canada is a leader in safe, high-quality, economically prosperous air transport. Serving as a gateway to the world, our airports generate nearly 200,000 jobs and contribute nearly $35 billion in GDP to our nation's economy. In my riding of Kelowna Lake Country, under the direction of Airport Manager Sam Samadar, Kelowna International Airport is one of the busiest airports in Canada, serving nearly 2 million people annually and contributing more than $800 million in total economic output to the province of British Columbia. I invite all members of this House to join the Canadian Airports Council tomorrow night at a reception from 5 to 7 at the Chateau Laurier to recognize our airport's contribution to our communities and the Canadian economy. If you have an airport in your riding, I'll see you tomorrow at the Chateau.
The Honourable Member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Mr. Speaker, today I stand in my Team Canada jersey, remembering the young men and women that lost their life in the horrific tragedy in Humboldt. As a parent, I know what it's like to send my children on a bus destined for camp or school or a sports tournament. This touches the lives of all Canadians. It's about the families and all of the lives that have been impacted and affected. It's about the people who welcome these young men into their home as billets. It's about hockey mums and dads. It's about the volunteers who do their best to keep our kids safe on trips away from home. Throughout the outpouring of support on Jersey Day and the hashtags Sticks Out for Humboldt and Humboldt Strong, I know that this has deeply touched individuals from across the country. On behalf of the residents of Elgin, Middlesex, London, we offer our sincere condolences to Humboldt and everyone affected. May God watch over you in the coming days.
Here.
Honourable Member for Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, Canada is a place that is filled with incredible and kind-hearted individuals whose deeds are done without acknowledgement and for the benefit of others. I'm proud to say that my riding of Pitt Meadows, Maple Ridge is home to many of these hidden heroes, like George Klassen and his late wife Shirley. They started their nonprofit organization, Project Wellness, in 2006, providing clean water, education, medicine, and food to orphans in Malawi. Last week, I was invited to George's 80th birthday, and words cannot express how inspiring it was to hear his experiences. Since 2006, George has built a total of 39 wells, has taken almost 500 orphans under his care, and continues to successfully drill clean water wells. In a week's time, at the young age of 80, he is leaving to drill the first of 5 new wells again in 2018. Good luck, George. You're an inspiration to me and our community. On behalf of all Parliament, we wish you safe travels, and maybe one day I'll be out there drilling a well beside you. Thank you.
L'Honorable député d'Edmonton Centre.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre.
The economy must go hand in hand to ensure the long-term prosperity of all Canadians. With this in mind, and following rigorous reviews, our government approved the Trans Mountain Expansion Project. Working with our Indigenous partners, we have completed in the deepest consultations with rights holders ever on a major project in this country. 43 First Nations have negotiated benefit agreements with the project, 33 of those in BC. Yet despite clear federal jurisdiction, repeated attempts have been made to undermine the project over the past months. We say enough is enough. As such, we've begun financial discussions with Kinder Morgan in order to remove the uncertainty surrounding this vital project. We are also pursuing legislative options that will assert the federal jurisdiction the courts have already told us we clearly have. Mr. Speaker, the Trans Mountain Expansion Project is in the national interest. It will be built.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, all Canadians will remember where they were when this happened. Today, all Canadians will remember where they were when the Broncos tragedy occurred. 16 young Canadians died in a road accident in Saskatchewan. These young people were part of the Humboldt Broncos team. Players, trainers, staff were among the victims. It is in these moments of tragedy that we are all Canadians. Whether they be families from my family or military personnel in Iraq or people here in the House of Commons, whether they be Muslims who in the greatest mosque in our country prayed for them, all Canadians have sympathy. Hockey isn't any other sport, Mr. Speaker. It's really important for us. When people are on the ice, there's no language, race, religion. Today and always, we are Canadian, and we will all be Broncos. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Brampton West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past Saturday, people of Sikh faith, both in Canada and around the world, celebrated Vaisakhi, marking the founding of Khalsa by Guru Gobind Singh Ji in 1699. During the celebration of prayer, reflection, and unity, our thoughts turn to the community. We are reminded of our ways our vibrant Sikh community plays to enrich our national fabric. All across Canada, Sikhs reaffirm the values of equality, social justice, and most importantly, selfless service. Each year, thousands of Sikh Canadians take part in selfless self-service, also known as Seva, through free community kitchen, food drives, equality initiatives, and youth outreach programs. These programs, often run through local gurdwaras, such as Gurdwara Sikh Sangat in Brampton West, provide crucial support to their local communities. I applaud these programs for highlighting values that we share not only as Sikhs, but also as Canadians. To all those celebrating in Brampton West, across Canada, and around the world, happy Vaisakhi, Vaisakhi diyan lakh lakh vadaiyan. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Ville-Marie, le Sud-Ouest, Île-des-Sœurs.
Bright orange hair, Rusty Staub was one of the original Montreal Expos, far and away their first star. Arriving in Montreal for the 1969 season, Staub helped establish the fledgling team and the professional sport of baseball in the hearts of Montrealers. Ce 29 mars, le jour d'ouverture de la saison.
March 29th, baseball's opening day, Le Grand Orange died, and baseball in Montreal lost one of its greatest figures. He was one of the best hitters, and he immersed himself in Quebec culture and even studied French in order to be able to talk to local media and his francophone admirers. Le Grand Orange has left an indelible memory in the heart of baseball lovers.
Final goodbye to Canada's first baseball superstar. Rest in peace, Rusty. There's some kids up there that need you. Yeah.
Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, it's been 10 days and the collective soul of our nation is still coming to grips with the tragedy that took place at that rural Saskatchewan intersection involving the Humboldt Broncos hockey team. Despite the confusion, the anger, and the anguish over the past 10 days, Canadians have come together beautifully with an outpouring of love and support for those who perished, those who survived, and for their families. It's been incredible, Mr. Speaker, to see the compassion that Canadians have shown our neighbours in their time of pain. Tributes like Jersey Day, hockey sticks, athletic tape, and headsets placed on our porches, from Timbits Hockey to the National Hockey League and all levels in between, Canadians have wrapped Humboldt and the Broncos in our arms to mourn and to give comfort to those who need it. Hockey is Canada. Canada is hockey. Humboldt is Canada. Humboldt is hockey. This game, this beautiful game, will see the puck drop again in Humboldt, and when it does, all of Canada, and indeed all members of this House, will be cheering for Humboldt and our Broncos. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Vimy. Mr. Speaker, this week is National Volunteer Week, and I'm delighted to rise today to congratulate all those who have volunteered in their community. I would especially like to point out the work of Simone Langevin, who died March 27th, after having worked for 12 years as a volunteer in the Relais Communautaire de Laval. She was named Volunteer of the Year for 2017, and through her devotion, she made a difference in her community. She worked within groups where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, and all society benefited. Thank you to all of those who invest themselves in their communities. These people are ready to give up their time, and they are absolutely precious to us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I rise on behalf of the NDP to mourn the loss of life in the horrific bus accident 10 days ago. We also pay tribute to the heroic work of Saskatchewan's first responders and extend condolences to everyone touched by this tragedy. Hockey brings people together as a touchstone of Canadian identity, nor more so than in Saskatchewan. While our province has been too small to support an NHL team, Saskatchewan has produced by far the most NHL players per capita of any province or state in the world. But the young people killed were not just great hockey players. They were pillars of the Humboldt community. They embodied a spirit of public service that inspires all Canadians and that we should strive to emulate here in this Parliament.
Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Mr. Speaker, on April 6, Canada experienced a national tragedy after a collision in Saskatchewan claimed the lives of 16 people and forever changed the lives of many others. Sturgeon River Parkland's own Connor Lucan and Parker Tobin passed away in this terrible crash. Connor and Parker grew up in Sturgeon River Parkland, and they both played for the Humboldt Broncos. They are survived by their friends, family members, and teammates whose lives they touched. I would like to thank the first responders whose actions on the scene saved lives, and also the nurses and physicians who have spent countless hours attending to the needs of the victims and their families. You have the thanks of a grateful nation. To Lauren and Robin, Ed and Rhonda, no words that I say can ease the pain of your loss, but know that the people of Sturgeon River Parkland and our nation have your thoughts and prayers in their hearts. God bless.
The Honourable Member for Cape Breton-Canso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. As a former Junior A hockey coach and the father of a Quebec Major Junior League graduate, I can speak firsthand to the near sanctity of the team bus. Aspiring young Canadians spend days, weekends, even weeks on what serves as the team's rec room, their lunchroom, bedroom, and library. It's their sanctuary. But when the bus pulls out of the home rink parking lot, parents and billets alike think more in terms of, I hope the team gets a win and bring back some points. I know I can never recall thinking about, I hope they all make it back. That unspoken confidence in the team bus has been shattered, and the collective heart of a hockey nation has been broken. We mourn together. To the first responders who inherently and willingly accepted a high degree of danger and risk when they signed on to the job, we know they could never have imagined the horror and tragedy of that night. The Humboldt Broncos website posted, and I quote, "They woke up that morning with hopes of a winning game, but instead they united a nation," end quote. To the family and friends of all involved, know that our country shares your grief today and always.
As members of Parliament, we gather in this chamber to represent the people of Canada and to express their views and their wishes. Aujourd'hui, en leur nom, nous honorons la...
Today, in their name, we honor the memory of those who were hurt or those who lost their lives during the tragic accident that struck the Humboldt Broncos.
The Humboldt Broncos, I ask all members to rise in unity and observe a moment of silence. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Questions orales, oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, nearly 10 years ago, a government that was clearly hostile to pipelines took power in British Columbia. Since then, we have been urging the Prime Minister to take action, while the Trans Mountain Pipeline conflict has become a real crisis. But each time that the question of how to transport our resources comes up, this government only has one way of proceeding: delaying and obstructing. Why is the Prime Minister still waiting until it's the last minute to attend to these critical economic issues? Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
To speak as a Manitoban and as a prairie hockey dad, and to, on behalf of my family and all Manitobans, to offer our sincere condolences to the people of Humboldt and of Saskatchewan. This is a tragedy that we all feel personally in our families and in our communities. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister was very clear yesterday on the government's position of ensuring that the pipeline be built. He offered ways in which the government intends to act. He has instructed the Minister of Finance to engage in financial discussions with Kinder Morgan. He is discussing with his government legislative ways to reassert federal jurisdiction. This pipeline will be built.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reason why the stakes are so high
for Trans Mountain is because of this government's disastrous energy policy from start to finish. They vetoed Northern Gateway, something that had gone through an independent, evidence-based analysis. They killed Energy East. They've driven out $87 billion worth of investment in the energy sector. They've brought in Bill C-69, which has further shooken the confidence in Canada's economy. Why is it that the Trans Mountain project had to become a crisis before the Prime Minister finally took action?
Minister of Natural Resources. Approved the Line 3 replacement project. It's already underway, construction in Alberta and Saskatchewan. There'll be further construction in the coming weeks in Manitoba. We are in support of the Keystone XL project. We have approved the TMX project. This will result in tens of thousands of jobs being created for Canadians. It will give us an opportunity to expand our export markets. As members know, 99% of the export of oil and gas in Canada goes to one country, the United States. At the same time, we're investing unprecedented investment.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, today in committee, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor completely debunked the conspiracy theory that the Indian government was behind the invitation of a convicted terrorist to the Prime Minister's event in India. Will the Prime Minister rise and repeat the false allegations that he made in this House on February 27th, and will he apologize to the Indian government?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure there will be further opportunities to respond to similar questions, since this is my first opportunity as a Member of Parliament from Saskatchewan. May I express my deep condolences to those who have suffered loss in the terrible tragedy that has befallen the Humboldt Broncos, and join with all of those in the House who are expressing prayers for the speedy recovery of all those who have been injured. The demonstration of solidarity in the House of Commons today is extremely important to the Premier and the province and all the people of Saskatchewan, a province that both the Leader of the Opposition and I share.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Minister for his sincere words, and I know I speak on behalf of all all the members of the Conservative Party and all Canadians who have come together over this tragedy. I appreciate the nonpartisan sentiments that have brought us all together in tribute to the victims of the crash. Mr. Speaker, on February 27th, the Prime Minister advanced the theory that Jaspal Atwal's presence at a Government of Canada event in India was orchestrated by rogue elements within the Indian government. Today, the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor said that the Prime Minister's theory is false. Will the Prime Minister stand and withdraw the false accusations he made on February 27th in this House and issue an apology to the Government of India?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I note that the National Security Advisor was very clear in the remarks that he made today before the Standing Committee. I also note on numerous occasions when asked similar questions in this House, the Prime Minister has repeatedly said that he agrees with his National Security Advisor.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the information that has come out of the committee hearing today indicates that the government's theory that it was elements of the Indian government that were responsible for Mr. Atwal's presence was completely false, and that the theory being perpetrated was the responsibility of the Prime Minister's office. Did the Prime Minister approve the release of the false information about his India trip?
Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman seems to be following a misguided path here, because he says in one breath that he agrees and accepts the evidence that's been given by the National Security Advisor, That's good. That's exactly what the Prime Minister said.
The honourable member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, at the end of his meeting with BC and Alberta yesterday, the Prime Minister said that he wanted to impose a solution on the provinces to try to deal with the Trans Mountain issue. Now, this solution would contravene the Environmental Act of one of these provinces. The Government of Quebec reminded Ottawa that for environmental projects happening in a particular province, that needs to be subject to provincial environmental laws. So where is the cooperative federalism promised by the Prime Minister? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, we're very proud of our cooperation, our federalist cooperation with the provinces, and we always have been. This project is in the national interest. That is why we will be moving forward with this project. The federal government has jurisdiction over this type of project. Let us be clear, the Supreme Court has already stated this. We know it, and we know that it's in the national interest. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques.
Approved the Trans Mountain project relying on the environmental assessment process of the Harper government, which they used to denounce. They now use it because it suits them. Ramming a project down the province's throat is not cooperative federalism. Yesterday, the Prime Minister said he will pursue legislative options to reinforce the federal jurisdiction regarding energy projects, which he said, and I quote, we know we clearly have. But, Mr. Speaker, it's not clear. Will the government partner with BC, First Nations, and Alberta to seek greater clarity from the Supreme Court of Canada?
Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, first of all, the Trans Mountain Expansion project was approved by the British Columbia government, and there was an environmental assessment process in British Columbia that led to the approval. Second of all, we did not use the same rules as the Harper administration. We used different ones, which led to incredible consultation, historic consultation with Indigenous peoples up and down the line. And after months of consultation and tens of thousands of conversations, we approved this in Canada's interests.
The Honourable Member for Timmins, James Bay. Order.
Mr. Speaker, the ultimatum over the Kinder Morgan pipeline will not be solved by jumping to the deadline of a Texas oil company, because the issue of social license for Indigenous Canadians remains unresolved. And yet, if you look at the minister's own briefing notes, the government admits that their response to the legitimate Indigenous questions are, quote, paternalistic, unrealistic, and inadequate. Ooh. That's colonialism 101. Did the Prime Minister really think he was going to stop the Kinder Morgan impasse by deliberately excluding Indigenous leadership from Alberta and British Columbia from the talks?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, as the Honourable Member knows, major projects such as this are by their very nature controversial, and they divide communities. I mean, there are many people in British Columbia who think this is a very important project for Canada. As a matter of fact, it even divides political parties. Perhaps the member would want to organize a meeting with the NDP premiers of Alberta and British Columbia and see what kind of consensus he can arrange.
For Timmins, James Bay.
Refer him to his notes about being paternalistic and inadequate, because I'm very pleased that the Premier of British Columbia and Alberta are at the table. The question is why they're deliberately excluding Indigenous Canadians. Hear, hear. That's the question. They're asking Canadians to assume the financial risk for Kinder Morgan, but there's also a significant social risk. So I want to ask my friend, just how far are they willing to go to run roughshod over Indigenous rights to do the work of a Texas-based oil company? Answer that.
Very good. The Honourable Minister. The member for Lakeland. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Speaker, on April...
Sorry. Pardon me. I thought the minister... The Honourable... Order. I need a whistle, I think. The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Order.
Time to my honourable friend. But before I do, the member knows that the Government of Canada has engaged in unprecedented consultation with Indigenous communities up and down the line. We know that 44 Indigenous communities have signed benefit agreements with Kinder Morgan, 33 of them in British Columbia. Others have been involved with us in establishing a monitoring committee, co-developed between the government and Indigenous communities for the first time in Canadian history.
The honourable member for Lakeland.
Mr. Speaker, on April 6th in BC, the Prime Minister claimed Trans Mountain will be safe, jobs will be created, it will be built. 48 hours later, Kinder Morgan said it won't if roadblocks aren't gone by May 31st. On April 9th, the Canadian Pipeline Association said the energy sector is in crisis mode. That same day, the Natural Resources Minister said it's not a crisis. Ministers met urgently, spouted empty words, ran away. The PM took a day off while the Finance Minister met the Alberta Premier, then went to Peru. Yesterday, he met with both premiers for the first time and announced nothing. He's failed. Nothing. When will the Trans Mountain expansion be built?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Leader of the Opposition, in front of a national audience, decided to speak before the Premier of Alberta and before the Prime Minister of Canada. He has powers of intuition beyond the normal. He was able to intuit exactly what the Premier and the Prime Minister were going to say so well that he spoke before they did. Well, we're looking for the Leader of the Opposition's vision of the energy future for Canada, not seeking to speak.
The honourable member for Lakeland. Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, at least my leader didn't run away from the media. It tells the world Canada is closed for business, destroys competitiveness, and risks the future. It's the latest in a pattern of capital fleeing Canada under this Prime Minister, and it's just the tip of the iceberg. Hundreds of thousands of jobs in all sectors, billions for the economy, for social programs for all, hundreds of millions for more than 40 First Nations, and national unity are at risk. It's been a year and a half since the Prime Minister said it's in the national interest. When will Trans Mountain be built?
Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable friend says running away from the media. Last week, Country 93.3 in Fort McMurray, the Globe and Mail, CBC Radio Vancouver, 660 News in Calgary, the Calgary Herald, Bloomberg Media, CBC Radio Alberta, the Toronto Star, 77 News in Calgary, the Canadian Press, Radio Canada in Edmonton, the Dale Oily Bulletin, Le Devoir, Global News, CKNW Vancouver, Global News TV in Edmonton. I had ample opportunity to talk about the government's position to the media and to the country.
Order. The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal Prime Minister and his government hate Canadian oil. That is the reality. Let's remember, in January 2017 in Calgary, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "We need to phase out oil sands in Alberta." That is unacceptable for the Prime Minister of Canada to say that. But today he says, oh, don't worry, the pipelines in the West will work. But it won't, because he's not being honest. So will the Prime Minister recognize that he doesn't believe in Albertan oil? The Honourable Minister of Transport. He said many times, Mr. Speaker, that this project is in the national interest. It can't be much more clear than that. That's why we are going to move forward with the project, and that's why we will ensure that the pipeline is built. We are talking to our partners, and I can tell you that the Conservatives under Harper spent 10 years getting absolutely nothing done on this file. They didn't even start discussions with Indigenous persons. They didn't develop any environmental strategy. We believe in development, but we also believe in protecting the environment. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the Minister should agree with me. This is a serious issue, much more serious than the Nordique of Quebec. Now, unfortunately, since this government has been in power, we've just seen failure after failure. For Energy East, due to Liberal policies, the project was put aside. And currently, with Trans Mountain, we don't even know what the final outcome will be. Is the minister aware that when his leader says that we need to phase out Albertan oil, that is a very bad signal that we're sending not only to Canadians, but to everyone in the world? Honourable Minister of Transport. I'll say it again, Mr. Speaker. Our government will move forward with this project. It is in the national interest. It is important for our country. It is important not only for Alberta, but for Canada as a whole. However, the Conservatives under Harper didn't manage to get anything done for the 10 years that they were in power. We will move forward with this file. It's not a question of if, but when. We are working with our partners to ensure that we will move forward with this project, which is so important for Canada.
Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, 9 weeks ago when talking about the Trans Mountain Pipeline and our motion which would be supporting it, the Natural Resources Minister said there's simply no need for a motion today that attempts to manufacture a crisis where one does not exist.
Wow.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there is a crisis, and if that minister had spent half the time recognizing the crisis that's going on in the energy sector as he does compiling the list of interviews that he clearly spent a whole bunch of time doing, he would know that this is a crisis not only on pipelines but jobs, and it's their abdication of responsibility to the energy sector that has caused this, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I don't talk to the press enough. I talk to the press too much. All the time, we look at ways of emboldening and enhancing the oil and gas sector and the future of the energy sector in Canada. As a matter of fact, it was only a week ago when the Prime Minister and I were in Fort McMurray, talking to workers, talking to CEOs within the energy sector, understanding the importance of certainty for investment, the importance of investment in the sector internationally, that Canada is a place where people can have confidence, and that is why we are determined to see that this project in the national interest will be built.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
We've been warning the Liberal government that their policies are hurting Canada's energy sector, killing competitiveness and jobs. Their carbon tax, their tanker ban, their disastrous approval process has killed projects like Petronas LNG, Northern Gateway, Energy East, and now we see Trans Mountain dying a slow death. Investment and jobs are leaving Canada as we speak. When will they get their heads out of the sand and realize that their policies are disastrous for Canada's energy sector?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Through pipelines, job creation for the people of Alberta, for the people of Western Canada, compared to the 10-year record of the Harper Conservative government, not 1 kilometre of pipeline built to Tidewater, no consultation with Indigenous people, court cases who said that the Harper government had failed in its constitutional responsibilities, no conversation with the importance of energy and the environment being part of one conversation. Mr. Speaker, why would we want to mimic that record of failure?
The Honourable Member for Nanaimo Ladysmith.
In 2015, in BC, the Prime Minister said it's essential for social license for any project like the Kinder Morgan pipeline. When he okayed Kinder Morgan using Harper's deeply flawed process and over the objections of cities and First Nations, he went back on his word. He also promised provinces a cooperative relationship, but instead is pushing Kinder Morgan through in spite of the alarm raised by BC over oil tanker traffic increases and increased oil spill risk. Why did the Liberal government break its promise?
Minister of Natural Resources. Mr. Speaker, the member talks about the same process that was used by the Harper government, and as I said a moment ago, we changed the process. We added layers of consultation with Indigenous peoples because the Federal Court of Appeal said that the Harper government didn't consult enough. We sent an expert panel that went up and down the line. There are now 44 Indigenous communities who will benefit, 33 of them in British Columbia. We know that projects like this don't achieve consensus everywhere. We do know that this is in the national interest.
Honourable member for Stina-Bulkley Valley.
Last year, the people of British Columbia elected a government truly committed to protecting our coast. More than 2 years ago, this Liberal government promised to completely redo Stephen Harper's failed assessment of the Kinder Morgan pipeline project. Yet because Liberals broke that promise, the people of BC have taken to the streets and to the courts to defend our beautiful coast and our legal rights. But it isn't just the Prime Minister who's betraying that commitment. Every single Liberal MP elected from BC broke that promise too. So my question is simple. Is there just one BC Liberal MP who has the courage to stand up to this Prime Minister? Is there just one who will stand with British Columbians?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite forgot to mention the $1.5 billion ocean protection plan. He didn't mention it because, for whatever reason, he's not prepared to admit that this government has established and will establish a world-class system to protect our coasts. Why is that not part of the conversation? A coast that this member in his riding knows all too well is essential not only to British Columbians, but to all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Mr. Speaker, for months now, we have been demanding that the Prime Minister take action to get Trans Mountain built. But all we've gotten is slogans and platitudes. This crisis is more about than a pipeline. It's about the confidence job-creating businesses have in Canada. This crisis will take more than just a layover on his way to Paris to get the problem solved. So, Speaker, to the Minister, when will it get built?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
The government is committed to having the pipeline built. We have intervened in motions at the National Energy Board when there were attempts to unnecessarily delay the project. We happen to be successful in that motion. We will be continually alert to attempts to delay because we know that delay adds to uncertainty. Uncertainty adds to costs. What the Prime Minister said yesterday is that we will not tolerate unnecessary delays and we will add certainty.
Member for Halliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Speaker, the Prime Minister continues to demonstrate that he either doesn't want this Trans Mountain pipeline to be built or really doesn't care if it even proceeds. Instead, he continues to make matters worse by imposing policies that harm the Canadian energy sector, like the carbon tax and new regulations that penalize Canadian oil exports. The failure of this Prime Minister to take leadership has caused this crisis. So, Speaker, when will the Liberals finally take this crisis seriously?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I just don't understand where the preamble comes from. You know, members opposite talk about just words. Well, if they were tuning in to what the Prime Minister said yesterday, or maybe they're tuned off after the Leader of the Opposition was finished, not waiting for the Premier of Alberta, not waiting for the Prime Minister of Canada, he would have heard not only words, but commitment in significant and substantial ways, because this pipeline will be built.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Mr. Speaker, it has been 5 months since the Prime Minister approved the Trans Mountain pipeline, but Kinder Morgan is still unable to get their shovels into the ground. The Prime Minister has failed to show the leadership required to solve an interprovincial dispute. The blame for this project failing to move forward falls squarely at his feet. When will the Prime Minister stop promising this pipeline and start delivering it?
That's right.
Honourable Minister.
Actually, it wasn't 5 months ago, Mr. Speaker, when the pipeline was approved. It was well more than a year ago. And ever since the pipeline was approved, the Prime Minister, in his speeches, regardless of where they're delivered, in Nanaimo, in Vancouver, in Edmonton, in Fort McMurray, in Calgary, in Winnipeg, in St. John's, Newfoundland, in Fredericton, has the same message. And the message is that we have the capacity and the commitment in this government to make sure that we are stewards of the environment, that we are creating good jobs for the energy sector in Canada.
Honourable Member for Peace River Westlock.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister says he wants Trans Mountain Pipeline built, but like every promise he makes, it's all talk and no action. Let's be clear. Since this government has taken power, 125,000 jobs have been lost in the Canadian oil patch. That's devastating on local communities and families. We're 6 weeks away from losing this project and all the jobs that go with it. When will the pipeline be built?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
The member quotes 125,000 jobs lost. He doesn't quote that half of them have been regained. So, as often is the case in having a discussion with members opposite, we don't get the full picture. For example, how often do we hear them talk about the jobs that have been created by approving Line 3? How many times do we hear them talking about the pipelines that we've approved in Northern Alberta? Why don't they talk about this government's commitment to work with the private sector to make sure that Canada is at the leading edge of using the resources we have in the...
Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is now promising to remove the uncertainty around the Kinder Morgan pipeline. Yet 28 months into their mandate, they've yet to deliver their promised strengthened environmental and project review laws. Industry, legal experts, and Indigenous leaders alike all agree this fast-tracked omnibus bill will create even greater uncertainty and fails to make significant reforms. Will this government finally agree to divide this bill and enable constructive dialogue and deliver the promised strengthened environmental and energy laws?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Mr. Speaker, our government has brought forward in Bill C-69 better rules for the review of major projects that will protect our environment, fish and waterways, will restore public trust and respect Indigenous rights, and will strengthen our economy and encourage investment. Reforms to these laws were important because of the gutting of environmental assessment procedures that were undertaken in 2012 under the previous Conservative government. We are committed to changing the way decisions on projects are made so that they are guided by science, evidence, and Indigenous traditional knowledge.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie.
Morgan. Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, follow me because it's complicated to understand the Liberals' law object. On the one hand, they're talking about a new system for environmental assessment that's supposed to restore public confidence, but at the same time, it's impossible to understand which project it'll apply to. If nothing's assessed, well, it won't serve a purpose. And the Minister of the Environment is giving free passes to very polluting projects. So what purpose does it serve to have an EA process if the projects are dangerous to our environment and the ones that are dangerous, and they won't even be assessed?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The environment and the economy go hand in hand. We have put forth better regulations that will protect the environment, restore public confidence, and respect the rights of Indigenous peoples. This will result in a project-based approach, a clearer process, and more effective process.
Mr. Speaker, as the Chair of the Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities, I was proud to table our committee study on Canada's seniors, tabled in the House a few weeks ago. Our government has shown that it is committed to improving income security and promoting social inclusion for seniors. Could the minister responsible for seniors tell this House what the next steps are for Canadian seniors?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would first like to thank the member from Cambridge, as well as all members of the UMA committee, for their outstanding work on behalf of seniors. I would also like to thank the member from Nickel Belt for tabling the motion that led to this report, as well as all members of the Liberal Caucus on Seniors. I would also, Mr. Speaker, say that we are looking forward to working with the National Seniors Council to review and respond to the important work of the committee. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, on February 22nd, the Prime Minister told Canadians that the Atwal invitation to India came from one of his members. Then, February 27th, he said loudly and clearly that it was a conspiracy by rogue elements in the Indian government. Today, the National Security Advisor, Mr. Jean, revealed that he had never specified the Government of India in his briefing. So will the Prime Minister do the right thing and retract his statement?
Minister of Public Safety. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has always supported his national security advisor, but whether by accident or by design, the opposition continues to pursue a faulty and misleading line of argument. Mr. Speaker, to provide the opposition with full information, both classified and unclassified. An offer has been outstanding for more than 3 weeks now to provide that full briefing to the Leader of the Opposition. When will that briefing be scheduled by the Leader of the Opposition?
The Honourable
Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, I think that this morning's briefing was clear. But despite that, despite the evidence from the National Security Advisor, Canadians don't know the truth about the Atwal affair. Mr. Jean denies that the conspiracy was by rogue elements of the Indian government. That's what he said this morning. Now, India is an important country for us when it comes to exports, and it's fragile. When will the Prime Minister show some leadership and apologize to the Indian government?
Mr. Speaker, the speculation about some so-called conspiracy theory largely came from the opposition. That is the problem, Mr. Speaker, when you're operating on misinformation and disinformation and a willful ignorance of the facts. The offer has been made to provide the opposition with the full classified briefing, and so far they have refused to schedule that meeting. They should schedule the meeting so the Leader of the Opposition can be fully briefed.
Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, on February 22nd in India, the Prime Minister acknowledged that one of his MPs invited Jaspal Atwal to his events. On February 27th, in this place, the Prime Minister acknowledged claims by his security advisor that the Indian government conspiracy was a possible route to the invitation as well. Today, the Minister is suggesting it's us making this claim, Mr. Speaker, when he in this House refused to talk about classified information. So if an invitation from his own MP is classified, why do we need a special investigation if it's all not classified?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, if the honourable gentleman fails to understand the difference between classified and unclassified information, he is in desperate need of a briefing to explain the distinction. The offer has been made to the Leader of the Opposition. The Leader of the Opposition should accept that invitation, and maybe the Leader of the Opposition would then avoid headlines like "Conservatives duped by false story."
Honourable Member for Durham.
Mr. Speaker, today the Minister has suggested the opposition's on a misguided path. Well, the tour guide on that misguided path is the Prime Minister and this Minister, Mr. Speaker. I would put it back at him. If a Liberal MP invited Mr. Atwal, a convicted terrorist, to the Prime Minister's events, and they cancelled that, and that's the only possible explanation for the India scandal, why do we need a classified briefing?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, maybe the obvious fact is, Mr. Speaker, that the Leader of the Opposition and the Opposition generally is not fully informed of all of the facts that they need to know to fully understand the situation and indeed to avoid mistakes like they made last week in getting sucked into a totally false story.
Honourable Member for Esquimalt, Saanich, Souk.
Mr. Speaker, while the repeated use of chemical weapons by Syrian government forces is unquestionably a war crime, the airstrikes last week were not only contrary to international law, but similar strikes last year failed to end the use of chemical weapons on Syrian civilians. The government has clearly expressed their support for these airstrikes, but there's no evidence of any plan for what's next or any diplomatic efforts to try and end this crisis. Mr. Speaker, where's Canada in pushing for an international solution to the Syrian crisis?
The Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, we have been clear in our condemnation of the use of chemical weapons against people in eastern Ghouta, and we've been working hard with international allies to pursue accountability for what are war crimes. This includes $9 million for the verification, investigation, and fact-finding activities of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons and the UN, and we are also providing over $290 million to support NGOs, UN partners, and the Red Cross to deliver life-saving assistance in Syria. Mr. Speaker, the murderous Assad regime must end the deliberate targeting of civilians.
The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. It's not just chemical weapons that are being used by Assad against civilians, against his own people, Mr. Speaker. There are attacks, other attacks, forced disappearances, torture, famine as a tactic for war, and I've just listed a few. Will the government contribute to diplomatic efforts to put an end to this horrible suffering by the Syrian people? Take the authors of these crimes to hold them to account and increase humanitarian assistance. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we are clear in our condemnation of the use of chemical weapons in eastern Ghouta, as well as all violence against Syrians. Canada continues to work with its international allies to hold the authors of these crimes accountable. That includes $9 million for verification, investigation, and fact-finding missions, among others. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker, that the murderous Assad regime must put an end to this deliberate targeting of its own people. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Léhat. Mr. Speaker, this is a National Grain Producers Week, and many producers will be in Ottawa this week. And the crisis when it comes to transporting grains is going to be on the agenda. And the Prime Minister and the Minister of Agriculture, through their lack of action, have cost producers and the economy millions in losses. This government's trademark is waiting for things to resolve themselves. Canada's reputation has been tarnished when it comes to grain exports. Can the Minister of Agriculture inform the House of the government's intentions when it comes to the proposed amendments by the Senate to Bill C-49?
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, I've written to the two grain companies to accelerate the issue. There has been a great deal of progress since then. We will continue to work on that. When it comes to the proposed amendments from the Senate on Bill C-49, we have received them. We are taking a close and careful look at them, and we will very shortly present our position on that. I hope that the Conservatives will support us so that we can get this bill through Parliament as quickly as possible.
President, Liberals have said again and again that Bill C-49 will resolve the rail backlog. They refuse to divide Bill C-49. They refuse to use a Northern Council to force the railway companies to move our farmers' grain to market. And the Ag Minister finally unveiled the truth in Winnipeg recently, quote, if Bill C-49 passes, it won't solve the issue right away. How will he respond to the amendment on Bill C-49? Would it be another refusal to act for farmers?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, we care very deeply about the movement of grain in this country. It's an extremely important commodity, and I have written with the Agriculture Minister to the railways to get them to increase the flow of grain to our ports, and they are certainly doing that as well. And I've also spoken to them about the 90% of the other commodities that they carry that are so important for Canadians: forestry products, potash, containers, coal, minerals, and all of those other products as well.
Honourable Member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, the minister's corrupt surf clam decision had nothing to do with reconciliation. And rather, it has all to do with blatantly lining the pockets of Liberal families, Liberal family insiders. The Newfoundland and Labrador Premier was in Ottawa late last week and raising serious questions about job losses, economic impact, and this corrupt bid process. Can the Prime Minister please explain why lining the pockets of Liberal family members and Liberal insiders is more important than the families of Grand Bank?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have increased the participation of Indigenous peoples in the fishery is part of our commitment. Improving relations, and as you know, it comes from this is an important stage in reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, Mr. Speaker. I know that it's difficult for the former government to admit, but they completely forgot about First Nations in this public process, Mr. Speaker. And what we have done is put Indigenous peoples in the forefront, and we will ensure that this resource is available to all Canadians.
White Rock.
Mr. Speaker, as a former youth probation officer, Little League football and basketball coach, I've seen the amazing power of sport to change lives. Following the incredible successes of Canadians at the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Games, and now at the Commonwealth Games in Australia, could the Minister of Sport and Persons with Disabilities please, like Rusty Staub, knock this softball out of the park? What is the importance of these games for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you to the member for South Surrey White Walk for an important question. Our athletes' tremendous achievements at the Gold Coast 2018 Commonwealth Games are a source of pride for Canada and reflect the strength of our sports system. Les Jeux du Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth Games lead to the Olympics and the Paralympic Games.
Of our athletes for their podium and personal best successes. They're bringing home 82 medals, and they are an inspiration for all Canadians.
The honourable member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Mr. Speaker, this weekend, armed rebel factions conducted 2 coordinated attacks against UN bases in Mali. It comes a week after 2 peacekeepers were killed in Mali. These are targeted attacks by a variety of terror groups operating with impunity in Mali, and increasingly, UN peacekeepers are the target. Will the Liberal government finally admit that the Mali mission is not a peacekeeping mission, and will they bring this deployment to this House for a debate and a vote?
Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, regardless of where our Canadian Armed Forces personnel serve, whether it's in Iraq or on UN peacekeeping missions. We're going to make sure that they have the appropriate mandate, the appropriate equipment, Mr. Speaker, more importantly, the right rules of engagement that will be set out by the Chief of Defence Staff to making sure that they have the right of self-defence and, more importantly, for the protection of civilians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Mr. Speaker, last Tuesday, a fire broke out on the Catherine Spirit. 75 firefighters were mobilized to deal with it. The firefighters saw a black plume of smoke and are so concerned because they wonder what they inhaled. I have questions. Were contaminants removed from the vessel? What caused the fire? What will the consequences be? This work should be done in a safe manner. Will the government conduct an investigation to shed light on this fire on the Catherine Spirit? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As you know, our government acknowledges the risks relating to abandoned vessels for the environment. A small fire broke out in the machine room on the Catherine Spirit during a work that was taking place on April 10th. No one was injured, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to reiterate no injuries took place. The Coast Guard was in constant communication with officials on the Catherine Spirit, and we will continue to do so. We will monitor the vessel to ensure that the local community is taken into account and the issue is resolved once and for all. The Honourable Member for Saint-Léonard Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, many Canadians, like the residents of my riding, are busy doing their taxes, and this will give them access to important credits and benefits that our government has put in place, such as the Canada Child Benefit and the Canadian Caregiver Tax Credit. We know that this year our government has improved services to tax filers. Can the Minister of National Revenue inform this House of the important changes put in place to make it easier for Canadians to file their taxes electronically? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
I would like to thank my colleague from St. Leonard, St. Michel for his important question. Improving services at the agency is our top priority. We have done so for nearly 90% of Canadians who choose to file online with services such as autofill, my return, and net files. The Express Notice of Assessment service lets Canadians using certified tax software receive and print their notice of assessment immediately after filing. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind all members and Canadians in this House to file their tax returns by April 30th to ensure that they access the benefits to which they're entitled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, the Assad regime has repeatedly used chemical weapons against its own people, and our allies have struck to try and take this capability away. But next month, despite being one of the world's worst offenders of international law regarding the possession and use of illegal weapons, Syria will chair the UN Conference on Disarmament. There could be no equivocating about whether or not this is acceptable, and Canada has boycotted this conference in the past when it was chaired by other rogue states. So will the government condemn this appointment and boycott this meeting?
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr.
Speaker, my colleague across the way knows how strongly this government condemns the use of chemical weapons by the Assad regime on people in eastern Ghouta. We've supported the decision by the United States, the United Kingdom, and France to take action to degrade the Assad regime's ability to launch chemical weapons attack against its own people, and we continue to work closely with our allies in the international community on this and many other issues that concern the Syrian regime and security for the people of Syria. We're providing vital support to the fact-finding mission in Syria and humanitarian efforts. We condemn the Assad regime and its backers, Russia and Iran, for repeated violation of human rights.
L'honorable député de Rivière-du-Nord.
The Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister had the very bad idea to resolve the spat between BC and Alberta. As a result, social acceptability, Aboriginal rights, the province's right to determine what happens in its jurisdiction is all going out the window, and henceforth Ottawa will be making decisions on its own. This signals an end to the Prime Minister's cooperative federalism. It's back to Ottawa knows best. BC doesn't want Kinder Morgan any more than Quebec wanted Energy East. Is it that difficult to understand?
The Minister of Transport.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to mention that the relationship between our federal government and the province of Quebec has always been of the utmost, very respectful. We understand the importance of respecting jurisdictions which are provincial, and that's what we've done since the outset. Let me be clear. The decision regarding the expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline is under federal jurisdiction. It's a matter of determining who is responsible for which issue. And in passing, I'd like to congratulate my colleague for his beautiful shirt today.
Député de Rivière-du-Nord.
Honourable Member for Rivière-du-Nord. We're talking about respect. If Quebec establishes legislation to protect its environment or develop its land, Ottawa can come through, ignore it. These laws adopted by our elected officials, all in the interest of the national interest? No, thank you, Mr. Speaker. In Quebec, having a pipeline imposed in the name of the national interest is simply out of the question. That's why we support BC. Since when does national interest mean taking action that's not in the interest of Quebec, the provinces? We're talking about respect here. The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to quote Premier Couillard, who says our Alberta counterparts are aware of the importance of making their resources available to the country. It's as if we were told that we couldn't export our hydroelectricity. I wouldn't be very happy. We have to understand that fact. In the government, we do understand the way Alberta feels on this.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition is rising on a point of order.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. During question period, the Minister of Natural Resources misled the House by indicating that the previous Conservative government was not able to complete any pipelines. I'd like to seek unanimous consent to table the list of the 4 major pipelines that were built under the previous Conservative government, including the approval of Northern Gateway, a pipeline to Tidewater.
That's the honourable order. I have to hear the answer, and I have to ask the question. Members come to order. Does the honourable member have the honourable leader of the opposition have the unanimous consent of the House? No, there is no unanimous consent. Tabling of documents. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, there's a message from the Governor General with his signature.
I've been working out.